All right, today we're going to dive into a condition that affects literally millions of people all over the world, but it's still pretty misunderstood. We're talking about anemia. So let's get right into what it is, and more importantly, why you should know about it.
Have you ever asked yourself this? That feeling of being totally wiped out, that persistent, dragging fatigue that even a giant cup of coffee can't touch. Now, there can be a ton of reasons for it, for sure, but one of the most common medical culprits behind that feeling is anemia.
So what even is anemia? Let's think about it like this. Imagine your body is a huge, bustling city. And oxygen? That's the essential package that every single building, every single house needs to function. Your red blood cells? Well, they're the delivery trucks. Anemia is what happens when that whole delivery service just breaks down. At its core, it is a delivery problem. Okay, so one of the main reasons for this delivery breakdown is that the trucks themselves, the red blood cells, are faulty. They might be the wrong size for the job, which, as you can imagine, seriously messes with their ability to pick up and drop off that all-important oxygen. This here shows the two main ways those trucks can go wrong. On one side, you have microcytic anemia. The cells are just too small, they can't carry a full load of oxygen. On the other side, you've got macrocytic anemia, where the cells are way too big and clunky, and they're often super fragile. Just knowing the size of these cells gives doctors a massive clue about what's really going on under the hood. Let's start with the small cells. The number one cause of this by far is a simple iron deficiency. See, hemoglobin, that's the protein that actually grabs onto the oxygen, needs iron to be built right. So no iron means no proper hemoglobin. Simple as that. Then you have other causes. Some are genetic, like thalassemia, or some really rare issues where the body has plenty of iron but just can't figure out how to use it.
And now for the other end of the spectrum, the oversized cells. And trust me, bigger is not better here. These macrocytic trucks are large, clumsy, and they break down way too easily. This problem often points right to a deficiency in key vitamins like B12 or folate, which are the essential raw materials you need to build strong, effective red blood cells in the first place.
But sometimes the issue isn't about the size of the cell at all. Sometimes it all comes down to its fundamental shape. And this is exactly what happens in sickle cell anemia. It's a genetic condition where red blood cells are forced into this rigid crescent or sickle shape. Now, unlike your normal, flexible, donut-shaped cells, these things get stuck. They cause literal traffic jams in your body's tiniest blood vessels. Plus, they break apart much more easily, which means you're in a constant shortage of delivery trucks. So far, we've been talking about faulty trucks. But what if the problem is actually back at headquarters? What if the factory that makes all these trucks, your bone marrow, just isn't working right? Well, that leads us to a whole different kind of anemia.
And that brings us to another big category called normocytic anemia. In this case, the cells that are being made are the right size, the right shape. They look totally healthy. The problem here is pure quantity. The production line has just slowed to a crawl.
So, why would the factory slow down? Well, sometimes long-term inflammation from things like chronic kidney disease or cancer can mess with the factory's production signals. In other, much more serious cases, like aplastic anemia, the bone marrow factory basically shuts down entirely. It just stops making enough new blood cells of any kind. This quote just nails it. The problem isn't always making the cells, but keeping them. This is the perfect pivot to the last major cause of anemia. What happens when the factory is running fine, but the delivery trucks are getting destroyed out on the road? This is exactly what happens in something called hemolytic anemia. It's basically a case of friendly fire. Your body's own immune system gets confused, and it starts attacking and destroying its own red blood cells. The factory, back in the bone marrow, just can't possibly keep up with that rate of destruction, and a shortage is pretty much inevitable. Okay, so with all these different ways the delivery service can break down, how does your body actually tell you that something's wrong? Let's go over the key warning signs you really need to be aware of. And here is the single most important takeaway. It doesn't matter what the cause is, faulty parts, a factory shutdown, whatever, the number one symptom across the board is always a deep, persistent fatigue. And it makes perfect sense, right? If your body's tissues aren't getting the oxygen they need to function, you're gonna feel exhausted.
So beyond that crushing fatigue, other classic signs that your oxygen delivery service is failing include pale skin, because your blood is literally less red, shortness of breath as your body desperately tries to get more oxygen in, cold hands and feet, and feeling dizzy or lightheaded. These are all signals that your body is running on empty.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. So now, let's pull it all together into a really clear visual summary. This is how all those different problems leave behind specific clues for doctors to follow.
This is such a great way to see how doctors really start to sleuth out the problem. Every type of anemia leaves behind a distinct set of clues in your blood. And by looking at these key features, everything from the size of the cells to other chemical markers, they can trace the issue all the way back to its root cause.
So let's look at some of those fingerprints, right? Low iron, that leads to those small microcytic cells. A vitamin deficiency, that leads to the big macrocytic cells. When red blood cells are being destroyed way too fast, they release a yellow pigment called bilirubin, which can actually cause jaundice. That's a yellowing of the skin and eyes. And if the bone marrow factory itself is failing, you don't just see a shortage of red blood cells, you see low counts of all the blood cell types. See? Every problem leaves its own unique trail. And that pretty much brings us to the end. It's just a powerful reminder that your body is powered by this incredible microscopic delivery service that's running 24/7. So the real question to leave you with is this: is your delivery service getting all the support it needs to run smoothly? Thanks so much for joining this explainer.